Hi, welcome to the State of the Nation. I'm your host, Mike Sham, and joining us today is the leader of the Inkatha Freedom Party, the IFP, Mr. Velenkosini Hlabisa. Mr. Hlabisa, welcome to the State of the Nation. Good to have you.
Good morning, Mike, as well as the viewers and listeners of this program.
Mr. Hlabisa, let's kick off by looking at where the IFP finds itself at the moment. After a period of decline, the IFP seems to have really regathered some of the support that was lost. I presume a lot of that support was lost because of the Jacob Zuma effect taking over a lot of your heartland.
Thank you very much, Mike, for this opportunity to share the views of the IFP about our country and its state of affairs. The IFP is indeed on an upward trajectory following its decline, especially in 2011, not due to the Zuma factor, but due to the split that resulted to the formation of the NFP and some people wanting to taste a new political party. When the people of South Africa realized that the NFP was not going to be sustainable, they came back to the IFP. The people who were members of the ANC also are coming in numbers to the IFP because the ANC has failed our people in every respect. Crime, unemployment, load shedding, the list is endless. And people know that the IFP is a political party that you can trust, because whenever we make a promise, we keep the promise, and that is our trademark, which makes people believe in the IFP as a solution in the crisis South Africa is experiencing now.
Mr. Hlabisa, I'd like to just take a step back, before we start talking about the future and what it holds for the IFP and for South Africa. Let's go back to the early days, or the dying days of the old South Africa. And that was around that period after the release of Nelson Mandela, and that period in between the release and unbanning of the political parties, as well as the first election. And at that point in time, your erstwhile president, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, enjoyed a very prominent role in South Africa, to the point that I know at that point the British government was saying there can be no negotiations without the IFP. That's how important they were at that point. But something happened in that period that seemed to get the IFP sidelined. And I've always struggled with the idea of, was the problem that the IFP were sidelined just because the National Party and the ANC left them out of the negotiations, more or less? But it also looked a lot like under Mangosuthu Buthelezi's leadership that the IFP chose to become a rural and very Zulu party. Am I correct in that assessment?
The situation during the early 90s, violence that happened between the ANC and the IFP drove the IFP away from townships and urban areas into deep rural areas. Now the IFP is back in townships and urban areas because a lot of propaganda that was used against Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi and against the IFP itself during the early 90s and during the period of the black-on-black violence no longer holds water, because people now, they can Google, they can read on their own and get the truth as it is. And the IFP was labeled very badly by the ANC, but every day and every time now, it comes to the open that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was actually assigned by the ANC to go and block the independence, the homeland ideology from within. And he was assigned by the ANC to begin a wing inside the country as they were fighting outside South Africa. So now that is why you find in our townships and urban areas, people are welcoming back the IFP. That is why the IFP is on an upward trajectory, because people are now living with the truth and reality that all the propaganda that was said during the early 90s was not true, but was a political weapon to weaken the IFP as well as Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. But Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has survived every attempt to destroy him politically. Up to now, he is still a factor in South Africa, even though he is no longer a leader of the political party, the IFP.
The reason I raise that is because at times, and sometimes it still holds while he looms large over the party, does Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, he seemed to have two roles, and it was hard to see which one was more important, you know, in his life, and obviously it affected the politics of the country. And that is, he seemed to have two roles. One was as leader of the IFP, and the other one was, as he put it, Prime Minister of the Zulu Kingdom. Now, you know, the one role is as a serious political player that's interested in the country as a whole, and the other one that Mr. Buthelezi seemed to do with a lot more vigor was to protect the interests of the Zulu monarchy. Now, you know, the two can sometimes be at odds. And, you know, I think that as the IFP sits on the verge of a resurgence, it's important for South Africans to know whether the IFP, as it is now, is it merely the political wing of the Zulu king, or is it a political party for all South Africans?
The IFP is not a political wing of the Zulu king, simply because the IFP has members who are not Zulu-speaking people. We have members in other provinces, Free State, Gauteng, Limpopo, Eastern Cape. All those people from the Black community do not speak isiZulu. And we also have members who are white and those who are Indian and colored, who are not the subjects of the Zulu king. So now the IFP is a political party that has interest of South Africa and KwaZulu-Natal, and the Zulu kingdom is part of South Africa. That is why Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi and the IFP refused to accept the independence of KwaZulu as a homeland, because we identified ourselves as people of South Africa, not of a particular national group amongst the groups in South Africa. So in short, to answer your question, the IFP is a player in the South African politics, and the IFP looks at a South Africa with all its provinces free from the challenges we are experiencing, as we are a political party in the National Assembly, we keep on playing a major role in ensuring that our country becomes what we had dreamed of before freedom in 1994. That is why we championed the release of political prisoners, Nelson Mandela and all other political prisoners who were not the Zulu-speaking persons, but coming from other homelands or other parts of South Africa outside KwaZulu-Natal.
Okay, so this, if the resurgence continues, and there's no reason for it to stop, of the IFP, it's not the IFP. It wouldn't be their first taste of power. After the 1994 elections, famously, the IFP ruled, won a majority in KwaZulu-Natal. It ran many of the municipalities and associated regions within KZN, and it was quite clearly at that point the third biggest party in the country. But the IFP didn't exactly cover itself in glory in those years in which it was in power, where it was in power. What would have changed?
The truth is, people who vote governments into power are a deciding factor. The IFP was voted by the majority in KwaZulu-Natal in 1994 as well as in 1999. But for whatever reason, people changed in 2004. But for reasons people know, in 2021 local government elections, they changed their vote and gave power back to the IFP. Why? They can compare that. You see, we knew how the IFP managed to change the lives of our people. We can point and touch sustainable developments, schools, hospitals, police stations, universities, colleges of education, infrastructure, water services delivery. People of KwaZulu-Natal, the reason why they voted the IFP back into the majority of the municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal in 2021 is because they know when the IFP was having limited resources, they did not embezzle those resources through corruption, but they ensured that people benefit as much as possible. That is why then they brought back the IFP in the municipalities, and we are looking back to people voting in their numbers next year to bring back the IFP to power in 2024, because the KwaZulu-Natal government has failed them in a number of ways. And we are looking at people giving their vote in numbers to the IFP to be a major factor at a national level, because our government has done us a serious blow as citizens of South Africa. And I'm sure no one wishes to be governed by the present government, because everything is moving from better to bad and to worse. Almost every day, we are not seeing things moving from better, good, and excellent. It is the opposite every day. That is why, therefore, people feel that the IFP is a better choice and an alternative, which they know because they once tested it, and that when the IFP makes a commitment, it keeps the commitment. If it have challenges, it is not afraid to come and say, we have a challenge here.
Okay, but still, just to go back, you started off this answer by saying, that the IFP did get voted in to lead KZN, to govern over KZN in 94 and 99, and you sort of framed it almost as a question. You're not sure why they were unseated in those positions in 2004. It appeared quite obviously that it was some bad performance by the IFP in power back then. And what I'm trying to, the point I'm trying to get to is what has changed in the IFP that would make them better at governing? Because the IFP, let's be fair, if one goes back to those 1990s days, was the first. They may not have been guilty of corruption as we've seen with the ANC, but they were the first party to really introduce excess. People buying fancy cars before they were, had barely occupied a position. Helicopter rides. They moved the capital, from Pietermaritzburg to Ulundi, if I remember correctly. And, it seemed like it was their turn to eat, that the IFP that ruled at that stage, the actual delivery was way down on their list of things to do. Has that changed?
I cannot agree with you, Mike, in terms of service delivery. If you look at the period when the IFP was in control of the province of KwaZulu-Natal, as well as the local municipalities, because the infrastructure, Mike, that you have in KwaZulu-Natal, most of the infrastructure dates back to the period when the IFP was in power. You can go to local communities, the water infrastructure, the road infrastructure, most of service delivery which is sustainable, which could last longer. People can confess that, yes, we last had sustainable projects under the IFP rule during that period. You can go to schools, clinics, hospitals, police stations. Those structures dates back to the period prior 1994 during the erstwhile KwaZulu government, and immediately after 1994 in the first 10 years when the IFP was in power. Of course, people are human beings, Mike. They might have their own mistakes, and a political party is formed by human beings. You always learn from the mistakes you committed in the past, not to repeat, in order to advance your political party. You see, you spoke of fancy cars. If you can compare the vehicles that were bought by ministers in 1994, then now it is not the same.
It's not the same, but the IFP were the first people to do it.
Yeah, well, you see, Mike, there should be standard that for a minister, you must get a vehicle in terms of safety that will meet certain requirements, which was the same even at a national government. But something good with the IFP. In the erstwhile KwaZulu government, they also did have those vehicles, but in 1994, Prince Mangosuthu instructed all of them to bring back to the government, which did not happen in other homeland government. Those vehicles, people who were serving prior 1994, they took them with them as their own properties, except KwaZulu-Natal. One thing again, the only province, the only erstwhile government that brought back the balance in terms of money in the bank of the government, it was the erstwhile KwaZulu government. All other homelands, no one knows where the money went to, which was a balance prior 1994, except the IFP that accounted and brought it back to the fiscus of a new government in 1994.
Okay. So as we look forward, because obviously, I do think it's important that we interrogate the past. If one looks at, for example, there's only been 2 provinces that have been governed by any party other than the ANC. One was the Western Cape and one was KwaZulu-Natal. And in Western Cape, one would imagine through service delivery and through action, the DA government there has managed to grow its support, whereas the IFP did not. Let's roll forward, because we can't go back. We can only look at the past for reference. There seems to be a new energy and a new wind blowing through the IFP, and that has largely been under your leadership. What is it that you have done differently that has caused this resurgence in the IFP? Or let me put it another way, is this a resurgence in interest in the IFP and trust in the IFP? Or is this just people, in that wonderful South African term, just gat full of the ANC?
It is the resurgence in the IFP. This is a result of the drawing board. We went in 2011, sorry, in 2012, when we had a split that resulted to the NFP. I became instrumental. At that time, I was the secretary of the province of KwaZulu-Natal to lead the discussion in a drawing board of how to bounce back as the IFP. The plans that we drew in 2012 was firstly experimented in 2014 during the national and provincial elections. But the best opportunity to test our strategy was in 2016. You will recall that the IFP bounced back in 2016, though not remarkably. But there was a rerun at Ngutu municipality. I'm sure you will remember, because it was like a national election where even the top ANC leaders, all of them, the DA, the EFF, all of them came to Ngutu, and the IFP had an overwhelming victory in that rerun of the election. That was the first practical implementation of our strategy. And we reconfigured our strategy approaching the elections in 2019. You will recall the IFP removed the DA as the official opposition in KwaZulu-Natal, and the IFP became the second largest political party in KwaZulu-Natal. And in 2021, we won more municipalities as we govern the majority of municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal. In short, it has been a strategy over a period of time. And we have been setting targets after targets, and we have been achieving these targets after targets. The collective leadership of the IFP and the experienced guidance by Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi had been very helpful for the political party to regain the ground as it has done. And we are still gonna win more ground as we gonna be focusing more after 2024 in other provinces other than KwaZulu-Natal. Because of the time factor, you can't spread more in the remaining 10 months. We are concentrating in KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, Mpumalanga, and Free State. But after 2024, we will be expanding our footprint to Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Northwest, as well as Western Cape. And surely in 2029, we will be having a fair representation in all provinces of our country because of the strategy that we are following to expand from one area to the other.
You mentioned the many municipalities and the increasing growth and success of the IFP. Where are the clean audits in those municipalities that you've taken over?
In KwaZulu-Natal, there were 3 clean audits last year. Umhlatuze under the IFP, King Cetshwayo under the IFP, and Okahlamba, which is not governed by the IFP. And we have made a significant progress in terms of unqualified audit outcome. And we have given an ultimatum to the 2 municipalities that received disclaimer, and we have put them under political administration to ensure that we monitor them closely. But above all, clean audit should occur at the same time with service delivery. Concentration should not only be on clean audit at the expense of service delivery. That is why we balance the 2. And we agree that you cannot sacrifice clean audit simply because you say you are delivering, but both must balance.
Yeah, because it's not one or the other, it's both. I mean, a clean audit is a clean audit. Service delivery is service delivery. They sit separately, don't they?
Yes, they do, but they must complement each other. You cannot close your eyes and only work for clean audit and forget about service delivery. So both should be the focus of every government, as we are doing. As I'm saying, we have taken a specific program on the municipalities with disclaimer, and we said to them, is either you perform as mayors or we remove you in these positions.
Have you removed anyone yet?
My brother, as I'm saying, we have put them under political administration in the year 2023. And we said, if you don't shape up, know that you are going to be removed. The IFP has set an example, Mike, where we found our mayors not doing what is acceptable. We removed the mayor of Msinga. We removed the mayor of Abakulusi. We are not afraid to take an action when a mayor who is the face of the organization has done something which we feel is not right.
So, Mr. Hlabisa, let's just talk about, in recent past, the IFP have had some interesting bedfellows. You were in coalition with the EFF for a while in some municipalities, which gave you power. You have in the past been coalition with the ANC. Where do you stand on your partners?
The IFP, Mike, is a political party with principles and values. In 1994, we entered into the Government of National Unity, which included a number of political parties in South Africa, because we believed that we all had an obligation to build one nation that is composed of all people of color in South Africa. The Government of National Unity ran its course and it had its successes. Of course, we have an experience of working with a number of political parties. But when a political party crosses the line, we quickly say we can no longer go with you because you have crossed the line. You have made an example with the EFF. We got into an alliance or a coalition with the EFF because in some municipalities, the voters said, work together. They did not give one clear majority. They said, find each other and work together to ensure we get services. And we work together with the EFF, with the Democratic Alliance, Freedom Front Plus, and many other smaller parties. And we agreed that the common purpose is to ensure service delivery. But the EFF wanted to become a big brother and wanted to bully us and wanted to make unreasonable demands. And we said no. One thing you must know, Mike, about the IFP, we are a political party that is able to say no. Other political parties can't say yes or no. They live in an abusive relationship. Let me make an example for you. If you look what is happening at COJ in Johannesburg, that is an abusive relationship of a smaller party by the two big parties, the ANC and EFF, and people are not benefiting anything because each mayor elected after the other, really, if even you look at them, you could see that there is no capacity here, and these people are going to be a proxy mayor of either the ANC or EFF. That is what we refused from the EFF. And the EFF wanted us to give them Umhlatuze. We said, no, we can't give you Umhlatuze because people of Umhlatuze did not vote you. And they threatened us that if you don't give this one, we will pull out from other municipalities. You will lose 13 municipalities. We said, you can go to hell. It is only the IFP that has told the EFF such because we believe in our principles.
Okay,
we are in a relationship with the PA.
If a party like the EFF decided, oh, okay, we've seen the error of our ways, we're not going to be, we're going to behave better next time, would you accept them as a coalition partner?
Under certain principles and values, we will not. You see, in politics, Mike, you will never say never, as long as you agree on principles and certain values. What should be determining factor are the principles and values. If you don't agree on principles and values, then you can't make it a coalition. But if the EFF agrees that, yes, I thought I will cause you to lose 13 municipalities, instead you only lost one up to now, and we have lost the ground for the decision we did because they made a blunder of the decision they did. If they change and agree on the principles and values the IFP believes in, we will be open to a working coalition in the interest of the people of South Africa. Okay, so similar to the DA, we are working with the DA on the basis of values and principles we agree upon. There are times when we did not see eye to eye with the DA. And I can even assure you, Mike, no one knows what will be the outcome of a new government in 2024 after the elections. People might speak differently from what we think. They might give power to all political parties to come together as they did in 1994. You can say never now until such time you see how the voters have spoken.
Okay, so let's talk about those principles and values of the IFP. We seem to be a polarized country, and the more polarized we become, the more the current government, ruled by the ANC, is doubling down on some of their principles and values. And obviously, this being South Africa, a big part of their principles and values are around race and discriminating against minorities. Where does the IFP stand on the discrimination against minorities that is currently being legislated by the ANC?
The IFP believes in the protection of all people of South Africa, including the minorities, as well as those who are in the majority in terms of number. We are opposed in a big attitude of any race against the other. We believe that from a religious point of view, people must be respected on their beliefs, and from nationality point of view, even smaller nationalities must be ensured freedom and also to practice their culture, customs, language, and everything they believe in must be given a space as long as it is not acting against the interest of other people, whether the majority or small. That is the belief of the IFP.
Nobody's going to disagree with that, and everybody has those values, including the EFF and the ANC. Where the rubber hits the road is, are you going to continue to have, racially classified law, BE? Now we see racially classified water distribution, and so on. Where does the IFP sit on this? Because on the one hand, if one does discriminate against a sector of the population, it might, one could argue, benefit the majority, but it's not going to benefit South Africa in the long run, I would imagine. But where does the IFP stand on, let's sort of simplify it. Where does the IFP stand on BEE?
The BEE will need some readjustments, because initially it was thought to address the imbalances of the past, but unfortunately it did not achieve that goal. Instead, it reversed things. The IFP believes that we need to look at the imbalances of the past, but when you address the imbalances of the past, there should be no reversal in terms of subjecting any other race to unnecessary laws which discriminate them. You must ensure that those who were previously been disadvantaged should be accelerated, and those who had been having opportunities must be allowed to continue to advance at an equal pace with all people of our country. No law should disadvantage any race as a way of addressing the past.
So this sounds a lot. I've had on this show, I've had Songezo Zibi, who started Rise Mzansi. I've had Musi Maimani, who started Build One South Africa. I've had Bongani Baloy, that has started Chaluva. And in each case, I hear a similar story to what you say. And what I hear is BE exists to iron out the sort of iniquities of the past. They just didn't do it right. We'll do it nicely. If the country was governed tomorrow by the IFP, or let's say in 2024, are you just going to promise a better form of BE or no BE? This is the point that I'm trying to get to. I mean, let's put it this way. Herman Mashaba has been unequivocal on this.
The IFP will promise a better form of BEE, which does not suppress the groups that are classified as having benefited in the past, and also does not benefit people who were previously disadvantaged unfairly at the expense of others.
Okay, so we're going to back in the old South Africa, we had the United Party that used to, there was the official opposition that used to say, well, the National Party and their apartheid policies are wrong. We won't scrap it. We'll just do it better. That's roughly what you're saying, isn't it?
No, Mike. We shouldn't put that comparison. The truth is, some of the laws had good intentions, but implemented wrongly. So now you need to rectify that one, ensure that people of South Africa get equal treatment, equal opportunity, and no one is suppressed at the expense of the other or given an opportunity at the expense of the other. You need to ensure justice and equality in a true sense of the words.
Okay, so let's move on to property rights. Where does the IFP stand on property rights?
Can you expand there, Mike?
Well, I mean, it's become the hot topic, and for the last decade more, the ANC has been talking about expropriation without compensation.
Okay. No, it's fine. It's fine.
And many other forms of the same thing. We've got intellectual property, all kinds of property. The ANC seems to be doubling down on their 1960s policies. Where does the IFP stand on individual property rights? If I own a farm, if I own 5 farms, can I keep them?
The IFP believes in the expropriation with compensation. A person who owns 5 farms, using them, producing food that support our country, there is no point why you should or you would want to take that farm from that particular person. But there are people who own land which they are not utilizing.
Like the state.
Like the state and individuals. The IFP is of the view that firstly, the state must dispense the land it has under its control to people who are landless. But the first thing that must be done, the IFP says, firstly, reintroduce agriculture in schools, reopen agricultural colleges so that you train our people, our youth, in terms of the utilization of land. And once you have trained them, you can get into a process of the expropriation of land with compensation. Give it to people who will effectively utilize it because you have put them under training. So now, to answer your question directly and short, we believe in the expropriation of land with compensation. We believe in capacity provision to people whom you will give land so that they utilize it to produce food, because if you don't do so, they will sell it back to people where you got it from, and you are back to zero.
The biggest private landowner in South Africa, of course, is the Ngonyama Trust. And you could very well be governing over huge tracts of land that's in private hands, worked by other people who at the moment have no prospect of owning that land. Do you intend to do anything about that?
No. Ngonyama land, Mike, I'm not sure whether you are well versed how it works. I live in the Ngonyama land myself. And in the Ngonyama land, you can't give a title deed to people living in the Ngonyama land as of now. Like, for instance, you will find a person who is a breadwinner is working in Johannesburg. He can use a title deed of Ngonyama land in KwaZulu-Natal to go and borrow money in the bank in Johannesburg. And when he fails to pay the money, the bank is going to confiscate the land in KwaZulu-Natal, not in Johannesburg where that person resides. And the setup in many families in the Ngonyama Trust are polygamous families, where you have a bigger family living in one plot. Whom are you going to give a title deed in that scenario? Because the land belongs to all of us as a family. Where I'm residing, as I'm speaking with you, I'm at home. Every member of this family has a right to this plot where we are. I cannot sell it. I cannot use it to borrow money in the bank, because if I fail to pay the money, the bank can confiscate it and all of them will suffer. The Ngonyama land issue needs engagement, Mike, as to you must firstly allocate a plot to an individual person. Until you do that, you can't give title deed where people are living as a polygamous family. This should be done as a step by step in terms of ensuring that you do not disadvantage a bigger family by giving a title deed to an individual who can use it for his selfish gains, not taking interest of the family. It's a complex matter which really should need its own discussion to look at the short-term goals and the long-term goals when the act was done in prior 1994 elections.
Now, I'd like to close off. I mean, I fully acknowledge the complexity of the issue, but the issue will not get less complex by not discussing it, because I think there's a massive discussion there, because it potentially undermines a lot of the good work that a lot of people have done around the country. But at least you acknowledge the complexity, and hopefully if you do prevail in KwaZulu-Natal, you will enter into those difficult conversations. But you've had a relatively difficult conversation internally. I know that you sidestepped a lot of this, and that is around whose picture is going to be on the T-shirts. It seems like a ridiculous discussion point, but it became a discussion point that I think has some implications for South Africa, right? To those that don't know, there was a spat. This is my version of it, and perhaps Mr. Hlabisa can enlighten us. There was a spat regarding whether your face should be on IFP T-shirts when one, is in the election process, or Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who I think is your emeritus president of the organization. It's time to put your stamp on things? Yes, no?
Mike, the IFP made a decision when we went to elections in 2021 that we will honor Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi by making him a brand of the IFP. Even now, we took that decision. A brand of the organization is different from the leader of the organization. Today, Mike, we are talking to the president of the IFP, which is Mr. Hlabisa. The person who is going to be leading the campaign of the IFP is not the brand, but the president of the IFP, Mr. Hlabisa. Some political parties, Mike, do not have faces in their T-shirts. So now, as the IFP, we do not see any contradiction between a brand and the leader of the political party, which is Mr. Hlabisa, and the brand, which is Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. For us, it works better, both for the IFP. If you go to the rank and file members of the IFP and supporters of the IFP, we find no contradiction, because clearly it is known who is the president, but the brand, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, is a brand of the IFP.
Well, Mr. Velenkosini Hlabisa, I think you've got a lovely face, and I think that yours should be on every T-shirt of the IFP. If you ask me, I think you've done some great work. Something is happening there is no doubt. Voters are voting for the IFP in bigger numbers. There's a good chance you recapture some very important electoral real estate in the forthcoming elections, as you've been doing in the by-elections. And by all accounts, speaking to many of your coalition partners as the coalitions start emerging, that you're an important part of the future discussion in South Africa. And I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on the State of the Nation. It's been wonderful. To everybody that's watched us today, I hope you've enjoyed it. We've got all the leaders of all the relevant parties coming onto our channel. We want to hold them to account. We want to hear what they stand for so that we can make informed decisions at next year's general election. To everybody that enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you really like us, please just join our supporters club and get some interesting additional content. If you are in Johannesburg, we are having a live State of the Nation breakfast on the 10th of June. And you could, 10th of July, not 10th of June. Don't come on 10th of June because that's already passed. But 10th of July, where we're going to get a couple of the leaders of the opposition, and I'll be having a discussion with Mr. Hlabisa off camera about him being part of that panel, where we've got John Steenhuisen, Herman Mashaba, and a few analysts talking about the future of South Africa, especially the opposition coalitions. Once again, to Mr. Velenkosini Hlabisa, thank you so much for being generous with your time, and thank you to everybody, and we'll see you on the next edition of the State of the Nation. Thank you so much for joining us.